I'm Katie Leeds, and welcome to Live, Laugh, Shut the Fuck Up and Listen.
And I'm Marissa Senzaki. We are your strategic partners in evaluating personal and professional development trends.
Today's trend we're talking about is thought leadership. Has thought leadership always been a trend? We didn't think about that. And what we're wondering, though, is should it be? Are thought leaders really worth thinking about, or are they just a waste of our time? First, I like to define what does it mean to be worthy of your time? When I find something valuable, I love learning. However, I've realized that sometimes learning distracts me from playing. And when I play, I have my own insights, my own epiphanies. Marissa, what do you think makes something worthy of your time?
Worthy of my time? Probably how I feel in the moment or how I feel afterwards.
Feeling afterwards. So you're looking for outcomes.
Yeah, like a value add, I suppose.
A value add. Yeah. And this is where I think that the thought leadership becomes a slippery slope, because anytime you learn something new or see something in a way you hadn't thought of before, you get a dopamine hit. And the brain interprets a dopamine hit as a value add. I promise you that. As someone with ADHD, I am always looking for dopamine hits. And that's where I see thought leadership becoming thought followership. And you can call it followership and feel okay about it, but you're just really in the place of worship. You've put somebody on a pedestal of these ideas are better than anything I would think of on my own. And I find that people were more inventive, more creative, more in tune with who they are and what they're meant to do in the world when they didn't have other people's thoughts. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, the thought leadership or thought leader as a word has always kind of felt a little cringy to me. Like, what is that anyway? I'm pretty sure people have called me a thought leader before and things they've written up, and I'm always just like, I would never use that for myself, or I try not to, because I think it is very kind of pompous. Like, you're basically saying your thoughts are above someone else's, or your thoughts are more important.
Or that your thoughts are more well-researched. I think my cringiest thought leaders are the ones that tell everyone that they're researchers and that the latest research is showing, as if every human that's walking on this planet isn't a researcher. Do we ever think, when I taught history, it was do your own research and tell me what you think happened in the past. Read the documents that people wrote from the past. Read what they wrote about the people that wrote those documents. Make your own decisions. That's not what thought leadership is or become or ever was. And that's why, to me, it looks like followership.
Yeah, that's a good point, because when we talk about these thought leaders, they're usually people that are on social media, whether it's, Instagram, TikTok, whatever they're posting on. And the clout comes from how many followers they have usually, right? It's not really what is their background, and why are they an authority figure on it.
Well, I think their clout actually comes from the types of people, that corporations that bring them in and prop them up as the thought leaders. And that's where, yes, they have followers, but they also have New York Times bestsellers. They have the ear of people that are then becoming, people called you a thought leader because in your industry, you were leading people. And so I always wonder, well, who's leading the leaders? And Marissa, when you were coming up in the scrappy startup world, you've had some coaching, did you have thought leaders though?
Not that I can really think of. So I guess, 20 years ago, that wasn't really as big of a thing as it is now.
Right. You were your own thought leaders. And people being their own thought leaders is what led to inventive ideas. It's what led to revenues, and it led to IPOs. Like, all of that is pooling the creativity that's already around you. And then as things get more complex, we bring in other people to tell us how to do that. Or if we want to climb the ladder, we bring in someone to show us how they did it. And, we've just really taken people away from their own creativity.
Yeah, I think it makes me think about, okay, like when I was first starting out in my startup career, I was much more active in going to local meetups in the city, hearing other people speak on panels, eventually being on panels myself. But those thought leaders then I suppose were the people within the community that we were sharing ideas with. It didn't become this celebrity status where now the quote unquote thought leader is put on this pedestal as some kind of celebrity expert that we're
Experts.
all
Yes,
supposed
the
to.
word
Yeah.
expert. As if we're all not experts ourselves in something. And then now we have a whole invented syndrome, imposter syndrome. Like we've had to create more labels. I think that's the other thing that comes with thought leadership. It's a package deal that words are going to have to be impactful. So they have to land. So you're going to have to label something. You're going to have a steps process of something. You're going to have some type of program. And the great irony of the word program is that people are like, yes, I need this latest program. Like, you're not a computer. But maybe, and what's ironic is that the computer asks you if you are a human or a bot. And so we're just in this loop of programming. And so whenever we say I need to be a better version of myself, or I'm looking to level up my leadership, you're looking to step more into a program. And I've been a part of programs that, have people tell you what they want to see more out of you, people that you've just met. That they create containers so you can share intimate things, because those are the types of questions that they ask. But what if I don't want to be more of that?
Are there any people that you followed maybe in the past that now you realize were not helpful to your development?
So I would never say that anyone is not helpful, because we gain wisdom through experience. So the wisdom I've gained is to know what is not useful through trial and error, because I'm a human that experiments. And that's where I sometimes get passionate about what I think is more harmful. I think the most harmful thing you can do is say, I have less of something as a result of this program. I have less anxiety. I have less shame. That sounds great, but you didn't say it's gone. And so now you're in a program that will always keep you less.
So I hear you talking about, when you say less, programs or concepts and ideas that are targeted towards fixing what is quote unquote wrong with you.
Yes, the entire self-help, which is why people have tools. There is no tool like your body making all your decisions. And some people are like, well, how do you do that? How do you trust that? And I have lived my life like that. When you start living your life like that, you learn to trust that. I packed up a U-Haul and moved to Chicago with $600 and 2 Craigslist roommates and an interview to be a tennis coach. And it was crazy. But did it work out? Yeah. At 23, I was a director of student activities, and I'm an administrator. There's no planning there. There's no, let me read a book about how to do that. I read one leadership book before I opened my gym, and it was called First Things First, Break All the Rules. And I didn't even finish the book, but my main takeaways were that you really need to learn the rules so that you know when to bend them and why you're bending them and what benefit there is to bending them. And just for everyone listening, there's a couple rules you don't bend, and that's murder and the IRS. And you and I have both, or lying, fraud, those are some of the ones that you don't want to do. And you and I have worked with those types of people. Those are experiences where if we embrace the shitty stuff we've had, like, do I think that people should avoid thought leadership and going through those experiences? I do. I don't think it's a good use of time. I think the best case you hope for is that you have less of what you have now. But usually when I ask someone, if I had a magic wand, what would you have when we're done coaching? They would say, I would never doubt myself again. Sometimes, honestly, they don't say that because they don't think it's possible. They actually say, I would have maybe less imposter syndrome. And then we get rid of it because it doesn't actually have to exist. And thought leaders will say, even I struggle with this. And that's dangerous. They don't say, I used to struggle with this. And I don't actually want people to follow me and walk my own path, but I can at least be an example to say, listen, there are other ways that work. Like permanently, you can just raise the way that you see things. That's placebo effect. And so that's why they're not ultimately dangerous, because some people will be like, this was, the best thing ever. And anytime this comes up, I just use this tool and it goes away. And that's so great. So like what you resist persists, and you can live that way. The program works. It's just a program, which means you have to keep programming yourself. I don't want to live like that.
Mm-hmm. So there's kind of two different, I guess, arenas that we see this, that we're kind of talking about. One being, the self-help, and then two being that professional career space, where we're seeing people market themselves as thought leaders, and thus we're all buying their books, we're buying their programs, we're trying to be some version that's not us, right?
Yeah.
I don't know, I guess how would you say, if people are going to consume these books and these programs, that they do it in a way that's healthy for them?
So you go in as an experiment, and you're an experiment of one. So you can't be dogmatic, and it's so easy. Like, oh, I loved human design. Let me bring all these people in and let me learn about their designs. And you see, but in that experiment, you see at the end that the magic is always just two people interacting. So I'm in the personal development world. I'm in the professional development world. What I know, when I developed high school students to be student ambassadors and to be student council members and leaders of their school and represent and do tours, and ultimately the reason we closed way more people coming in the doors than we ever did before, is that you let them be them, and you see how they do it well, and you connect them to someone that can help them do it well, that's a peer, and you look for talent. You don't look for dysfunction. And we look for dysfunction in ourselves. And that's why we buy these books. We aren't like, man, I'm pretty good at listening. I'm going to go out and just listen to as many people as I can and see if I'm getting it right, and practice and play. What did some of the best listeners do? What were some of their tricks? We don't take it as let's experiment. We often take it as things like Scrum, for example. This is how we do things. And then we want to bring it to others versus saying, let me see if this is something that even aligns with the way that you're designed. We don't have the organic self-organizing, like you talked about, those people that were, and I imagine when you went to those meetups that they were talking about the future of, they probably weren't talking about this is the best way to do it now.
Yeah, never a definitive, this is the best way, but I think sharing the knowledge, sharing what has worked and hasn't worked. And then from that, taking oh, I think that would work for our organization, or maybe it won't, but you genuinely are curious to want to hear what other people's journeys have been like so far.
Yeah. And that's what I try to do on the Outstanding Women Leaders podcast, bringing on so many different people and sharing their journeys to inspire people to realize they can walk any journey they want. One of my favorite podcasts, Courage to Conflict, Marlene Chisholm, 20 plus years in blue collar manufacturing. That was her first job out of school. And she ended up getting her MBA. She wrote a really amazing book, and this is why she knows team dynamics. Real leaders have just been in the trenches, being a leader the whole time. No one gave them a title. No one gave them a book to read about leadership and how to organize. And she writes about how there's no outer conflict without inner conflict first. And when we have inner conflict, we tend to go look to other people to resolve it, which is what thought leadership becomes. And what I would invite people to do for inner conflict is to go inward for the inner conflict. That's why I like SCARF model, if they want to take an assessment and see what is your limbic system feeling, and to go inward and say, well, where's your nervous system at? Where are you breathing? Consciousness, your own consciousness of your own self, being conscious of self, being separate from you. That is ultimately what leadership is a path to awakening. Life is a path to awakening. Being an entrepreneur is a path to awakening. Awakening is just awakening to your own consciousness. You're not in your own consciousness if you're reading a book. At least not those. And also, interestingly enough, empathy, there's a strong correlation between people that read novels and having a lot of empathy. Because in order to make a novel devour and like really come to life, you have to be in each of those characters' shoes, and you have to feel what they're feeling just based in words. And those words are painting, fantasy pictures because it's not real. Some people, the first time they opened a book was because it's a leadership book. Like some people didn't read novels for fun, and they've only read professional development. And those are the people that always show up low on empathy tests. So another book to pick up is a fantasy book so that you can start fantasizing yourself about, and the kids don't do that anymore. They're on TikTok. And that's why I think thought leadership, for me, looking at it from the corporate level and leadership and the trickle down effect it's had, is that mom and dad want thought leadership from a professor and the kids want thought leadership from TikTok. And both of them don't want to have their own thoughts because their thoughts are uncomfortable. Their thoughts are anxiety producing. Their thoughts are depression producing. Gen Z's biggest risk of dying is not car accidents like it was for us. It's suicide. So there's no thoughts that are going to ever create leaders. There are leaders who create thoughts. And if they're great leaders, they're not going to invite you to be a follower. And that's not what we're doing here, right? Shut the fuck up and listen to your body, not your brain, but your body. Marissa, where have you seen thought leadership keep you in your brain and pull you out of your body, even if it was intended to put you in your body?
I guess in thought leadership exercises that are like, I have to sit down and I feel like do homework. We did an episode about the artist's way, which serendipitously we both, came across this, or actually I had it for a while, but people kept talking about it, and it's an old book. So I was like, okay, I'll give it a go. But there's so many different exercises in there that you have to do. And there's this progression. And my mentor was like, just flip to a page and do one of the exercises. And even doing that, I was like, don't really feel like it. And doing the morning pages, which is just like stream of consciousness writing. I like that you kind of took it your own way, where you weren't necessarily doing it first thing in the morning, like the book says to. I also was just like, where's a moment where I feel like I need to check in with myself emotionally? And I would just take those moments to then sit down and do the quote unquote morning pages. But I think when it's this scripted exercise, that definitely takes you into the brain more, unless part of it is like asking you to take the time out to connect with your body. That's where it gets, and I am a cerebral person, but that's where it just feels like, I don't feel like doing more logical work right now.
And the great paradox is that logic is a paradox. Like we're always looking for something we cannot find, which is the answer to why, and the answer to how, and the answer to who. And that's why my favorite homework assignment, the one that everybody gets, is belly breathing while they're doing their daily tasks. You are going to breathe anyways. Just why not experiment with knowing where you're breathing? When your thoughts are someplace, where's the breath? Follow the breath, shift your breath, notice where your thoughts shift. And that's the consciousness that you create. And so where coaching, strategic partnership, call me whatever you want. Sometimes it's a therapist. Someone said something about HIPAA the other day to me. I'm like, I'm not that. I'm just going to help you connect dots, because like AI, I will remember what you said in our first session. And at the 30th session, if we're still on a similar topic, we're going to have a lot of dots being connected, coming full circle. That's what logic does. Logic goes full circle. And at the end, what you have when is a regulated nervous system that we all missed out on, because by design, children shift their breathing from their bellies to their lungs. They can fight and flight and freeze in the middle of the night. If a burglar breaks in, we want people to be ready if there's bears around. But by design, that means that you need to train those tasks that you hate doing, or those they're afraid to do, or just anything that you're doing. Just train your body to enjoy them. And if you know where your breath is in your body, then you're conscious, which means your consciousness is controlling it, not some subliminal, subconscious thought leadership, like just you. And when you breathe differently, you see differently. And ultimately, that's what thought leadership is trying to help you do, is to see differently. They just want you to see differently in the way that they've used to see differently, which is the same because they are still through that. You know, I love Simon Sinek and how he says, you know, I don't blame myself, I blame the environment. But Simon still makes you play by his rules. You know, you really have to be arrogant to be a thought leader. Like,
yeah. Well, and that's, I think, the part that, you know, I consume different books or material, but I take everything with a grain of salt and I don't necessarily make that my dogma. But I think it's dangerous because, and now I'm losing my train of thought, but it very much is. I think if you look at the stories behind a lot of these thought leaders, they maybe had one epiphany or one, you know, life-changing experience, and they did something differently that all of a sudden like changed the course of their life, and they became more authentic with themselves. And they now think that this is like the answer to all human beings everywhere. And that's a problem when we buy into that and we think there's something wrong with us. And if we just do it this way, the way they discovered, how do we bring that back to we're all on the same level? We're all just people here on Earth School. And here's what we've learned, and we're sharing this. And maybe there's bits and pieces that you take from other people that you're like, oh, I want to, you know, experiment with that and give that a try. And maybe or maybe not, it works for you. But nobody should be put above you as a leader of thoughts. You should have your own thoughts.
My favorite thought is that life is here to be lived without answers.
Wow. Okay. We spend so much time seeking answers, though.
I know, that's how I can tell you that that's not where the life is ever lived. You know, what I think the answers I've been seeking are just language. I hear this more frequently from my clients. You just gave me you just put words to a lived experience I've had that I didn't have. And to me, that is powerful. And what thought leaders do is they share a story that matches a lived experience. I'm giving words, though, that take that experience, and I'm elevating you with those words. I'm not bringing you down here where it sucks and then showing you the path forward. So when they say you just gave words to my lived experience, like words that healed, words that moved. And so if I pick up a nugget, this is why I say thought leaders aren't useful, because they're even Eckhart Tolle, like in his New Earth, the man is worth like $800 million. You're not spiritual anything. You're a business. These are all businesses. And, you know, I'm in the business of not being in business with you anymore.
Yeah.
And I had a client say to me, I love that she said this to me. She said, do people become obsessed with you and just like want to be in your energy? And I hadn't thought about it, but yes. And that's part of why I don't let them. You know, like Mary Poppins flew away with her magic bag, you know. But when you learn to embrace that you're not here for answers, you're here for play. Work and life are both work. Life is work. And then there's play. And, you know, becoming the mystery of who you are. We're all trying to be Scooby-Doo. And guess what? Well, number one, there's always a human behind it, behind the mask. But there's no mystery of you to solve. How bored would you be? Perfection is boring. I assume that's why we came here.
So, Katie, how can people have more fun with their thoughts?
How can people have more fun for their thoughts? Starting by thinking that my thoughts can be fun. When a thought pops into your head, like, well, what's the opposite of that, George Costanza? Where did it come from? Who owned that thought? Well, now you're just in your thoughts. What if it's, well, that's an interesting thought, and you just moved on. When you were a kid, what did you do when you had thoughts? Like maybe you go try it out and it didn't work, and then you would go over here. Like we become addicted to our thoughts. So I'd say get out of your head, get into your body. When a thought pops in, where's your breath? Go to your belly. When you, I really do believe that trusting your body, not your brain, is essentially, what leads you right where you're supposed to be. That's how birds know to get south for the winter. And that's how, as the planet moves and heats up, that animals shift their patterns. Plants, when they know they're going to die, will start sprouting immediately. They'll start germinating so that they can live on. Trees will help a dead tree survive, and the stump. There's, and your body may just want an experience. Simon shared this week that, 8-minute rule, even though it was very pompous in the way he shared it. And he shared that if you talk to someone for 8 minutes, you'll feel better. You're someone. And it's true. If you could go talk to the barista, you don't have to call your bestie. Go make the barista laugh. You'll feel better, I promise. No one has ever felt worse by helping people. What advice would you have? Because you've tried a lot of things. You've had a lot of professional and personal development experience. And you're kind of at that, shut the fuck up.
I mean, yeah, I think I agree with you in that the experimentation on the play is important. I think, observe the thoughts and laugh at them. I'm not afraid to make fun of people and their thoughts, just take it kind of lightheartedly.
Other people's thoughts, then we can make fun of our own thoughts.
Right, because sometimes our thoughts are just not, they're silly and they're not helping us. And yeah, getting out of the brain is definitely helpful. But in terms of the information that you consume or who you want to inspire you, I think it's also important to just, look at the lived experience or look at what this person has actually done or is doing. I always kind of say as an example, let's say if I'm trying to find a romantic relationship, I'm probably would take the advice from someone who's in the type of relationship I want to be in, right? Not from my single jaded friend who hates dating. So similarly, we look at all these people that are taking professional work career advice from people who haven't actually had a real job. They maybe went to college and were born into privilege and now they just write books. But when have they ever been in a toxic work environment, been a middle manager, been fired from a job? A lot of them haven't had any of those experiences, and they're trying to relate to the average person at work.
Yeah. So if you want to head over to marissasenzaki.com and figure out what it's like to just get wisdom from a far above average person that's incredibly humble, head over to marissasenzaki.com. And, I'm kind of over the evaluating their backgrounds phase and really looking at what experiences do you want to have? No more career mapping. What experiences do you want to have in the next 5 years? And who do you know that's had those experiences in real life that maybe you want to talk to? And, bumping your way through is a really great way to also go about life, back to living life without answers. I had no answers when I moved to any of the states I've moved to about where my money was going to come from. Funny enough. When I moved to Chicago, I had no idea. When I moved to New York, I had no idea. And when I moved to Tennessee, I had no idea. I just knew I would have answers when I got there. I knew I would have answers when I completed the experience.
Yeah. I kind of feel like now the theme that's wrapping up that we're kind of both alluding to is connecting with real people in real time. And there's it's thought sharing rather than thought leading.
And thought fellowship. It sometimes the virtual world is great when you're also not going to listen to the speaker. When I host things, everybody has wisdom. I want to defer to different people and bring them in to share. And so you have fellowship. Virtual is nice because you can have thoughts from people around the world. I think that's why people go to thought leadership is, how do I get that? How do I expand that? How do I meet that? And that's why and over here at OWL Professional Coaching are launching OWL Standing Women Leaders, a parliament, so that you can develop a parliament of powerful peers. And there's an application process so that you know that the people that you're with are people that are dedicated to thought fellowship, not thought leadership, stealership, or any of the other ships that will eventually sink you. And that's probably what I'm offering is, just survey says thought leadership worth thinking about, or, ship thinking thoughts. I think anytime you're giving your brain over to someone else for answers, you're starting to sink your own ship. The less that we use the brain, the better. Everyone thinks like Einstein was such a genius, but what they don't realize is that his wife did all of his work. Mm-hmm. And that when they got divorced, he no longer produced the work that he had before. And he told her that she wouldn't get published, right? And this is the type of thought leadership that comes from the same institutions, from Harvard and Oxford and all those places, that these people still come from. It's funny how we think that people, like, the container will just change. Like, oh, it just used to be like that. They let these types of people in now. But I had a really wise woman who told me that when the container looks like this, you can add, you can subtract, whatever you do, but it'll still be this container. And so every thought leader is coming out of a container, except us. We came out of the closet and talked about people that really did us wrong. And you can listen to all of it on the Shut the Fuck Up and Listen podcast, Podbean, Apple, and YouTube. Follow Outstanding Women Leaders. We'd love to have you hear your thoughts. Give a hoot, leave a comment.